You do not change your life by chasing bigger goals. You change your life by changing your habits. That is the hard truth. The small things you repeat every day are building your future right now, whether you are aware of it or not. Every action is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. So stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting for a perfect day. Start with the next tiny action, because tiny actions compound, identity shifts, and your entire life follows. This is the power of atomic habits. Small habits, repeated daily, create massive transformation. Chapter 1. Small habits build big lives. Listen carefully. Your life does not change in one giant leap. It changes in the quiet, repeated moments that most people ignore. That is the truth. That is the beginning. That is the foundation. Small habits build big lives. People love dramatic change. They want the breakthrough. They want the miracle. They want the overnight transformation. But real life does not work like that. Real change is not loud. Real change is not flashy. Real change is repeated. It is built in the ordinary. It is built in the morning. It is built when nobody's watching. You have a choice. You can keep waiting for a massive moment to save you, or you can respect the power of one small action done every day. That is the key. One page read every morning, one walk taken every evening, one healthy meal chosen instead of another excuse, one focused hour of work before distraction takes over. These things look small, they feel small, but small does not mean insignificant. Small does not mean insignificant. That line matters because most people make the same mistake. They dismiss the little things. They say, this is too minor to matter. Then they repeat the same useless habits for years and wonder why their life is still the same. But your habits are not minor. Your habits are votes. Every repetition is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every choice counts. Every action compounds. You have a choice. You can repeat carelessness, or you can repeat discipline. You can repeat procrastination, or you can repeat progress. You can repeat comfort, or you can repeat commitment. That is the key. Not intensity, not emotion, not hype. Repetition, consistency, identity. The problem is that most people overestimate intensity and underestimate consistency. They want one hard workout to fix a lazy lifestyle. They want one long study session to replace months of distraction. They want one budget to solve years of poor money habits. It doesn't work like that. A big effort for one day cannot compete with a small habit repeated for 365 days. That is the math of transformation. You need to understand this in real life. The person who reads 10 pages a day becomes informed, sharp, and disciplined over time. The person who walks 30 minutes a day becomes healthier, stronger, and more energetic over time. The person who saves a small amount every week builds financial stability over time. The person who works with focus for 1 hour a day builds skills, reputation, and results over time. Nothing here looks dramatic at first, but everything here becomes powerful later. That is the key. Stop measuring your habits by how impressive they look today. Measure them by what they build tomorrow. Measure them by who they shape you into. Small habits are not about instant reward. They are about future identity. They are about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need a crisis to act. They are about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need motivation to move. You have a choice. You can keep living by impulse, or you can start living by design. You do not need a perfect schedule. You do not need a perfect mood. You do not need a perfect beginning. You need a repeated decision, a repeated standard, a repeated action. Win the day. Repeat the day. Become the result. Win the day. Repeat the day, become the result. That's how real change happens, not by accident, not by hope alone, not by waiting, by building, by stacking, by staying faithful to the small things until the small things become your strength. So start small, but start seriously. Read one page, do one set, save one amount, write one paragraph, make one call, clean one space, focus for one block, then do it again tomorrow, and again the next day. Because small does not mean insignificant. Small means scalable. Small means repeatable. Small means powerful when it is done consistently. You have already seen the truth. Tiny actions create massive outcomes. Repetition creates identity. Discipline creates destiny. That's the lesson of this chapter. You mastered the power of small habits. Now let's talk about what really drives results.
Chapter 2. Stop worshiping goals and start building systems. Listen carefully. Most people are addicted to goals. They love the idea of success. They love the vision board. They love the deadline. They love the dream. But a goal by itself does nothing. A goal is not a machine. A goal is not a habit. A goal is not a structure. A goal is only direction. That is all. Goals are for direction. Systems are for victory. You have a choice. You can keep staring at the finish line, or you can build the daily process that gets you there. That is the key. Not obsession, not fantasy, not wishful thinking. Structure, repetition, execution. This is where most people fail. They fall in love with the result before they build the routine. They want the body before the training. They want the business before the discipline. They want the degree before the study. They want the income before the work. That is backward. That is weakness. That is why they stay stuck. Do not chase the result. Build the machine. Do not chase the result. Build the machine. That is the truth. The result is the byproduct. The system is the cause. If your system is weak, your results will be weak. If your system is inconsistent, your life will be inconsistent. If your daily habits are broken, your future will be broken too. You do not need more excitement. You need a better process. Look at athletes. The ones who win consistently do not just want it more. They train more consistently. They sleep properly. They eat properly. They recover properly. They repeat the same standards every day. That is the system. That is the hidden edge. The crowd sees the trophy. The system produced the trophy. Look at business owners. The successful ones do not build once and hope forever. They create systems for sales, systems for service, systems for delivery, systems for follow-up. They do not depend on mood. They do not depend on motivation. They depend on process. That is the key. A business is not built on dreams. It is built on repeatable actions. Look at students. The ones who consistently perform well do not cram their lives into one desperate night. They study in structure. They review in rhythm. They show up daily. They do not wait for panic to become productive. They have a system. And because they have a system, they get results without chaos. You have a choice. You can live by emotion, or you can live by design. Emotion is unstable. Design is reliable. Emotion changes with the weather. Design stays in place. That is why systems win. They keep working when you don't feel ready. They keep working when you're tired. They keep working when motivation disappears. That is the key. The obsessed goal chaser says, I want to lose weight. The system builder says, I will walk every morning and eat with discipline. The obsessed goal chaser says, I want to write a book. The system builder says, I will write 500 words every day. The obsessed goal chaser says, I want to get rich. The system builder says, I will save, learn, improve, and execute with consistency. It's not about desire, it's about discipline. It's not about desire, it's about discipline. The fantasy is easy, the system is hard, but only the system creates proof. Only the system creates momentum. Only the system creates identity. You are not changed by what you claim, you are changed by what you repeat. So here is your instruction. Stop asking, how bad do I want this? Start asking, what is my system? What time do you begin? What do you do first? What do you repeat every day? What do you remove? What do you protect? What do you measure? What gets scheduled gets done. What gets tracked gets improved. What gets repeated gets built. You have a choice. Keep chasing the emotional rush of a goal or commit to the boring power of a system. The goal can inspire you, but the system will save you. The goal can point you forward, but the system will carry you there. That is the difference. That is the divide. That is the discipline. Do not chase the result. Build the machine. Do not chase the result. Build the machine. That is how habits become identity. That is how identity becomes destiny. That is how small daily actions become a life that actually moves forward. You mastered consistency. Now let's go deeper into who you are becoming.
Chapter 3. Your identity controls your behavior. Listen carefully. Lasting change does not begin with a wish. It begins with identity. Not with what you want, with who you are. That is the real battle. That is the real shift. Because behavior always follows identity. Always. You have a choice. You can keep saying, I want to change, or you can start saying, this is who I am now. That is the key. Wanting is weak. Identity is strong. Wanting fades when life gets hard. Identity stays when pressure comes. Identity decides what you repeat when nobody is clapping, nobody is watching, and nobody is helping you stay accountable. You do not rise to your goals, you fall to your identity. You do not rise to your goals, you fall to your identity. That is why so many people keep breaking their own promises. They're trying to build a new life with an old self-image. They want discipline, but they still see themselves as lazy. They want health, but they still see themselves as careless. They want excellence, but they still speak like people who quit early. It doesn't work. Your behavior will always return to the picture you hold of yourself. So stop asking only, what do I want? Start asking, who am I becoming? That is the question that changes everything. A reader is not someone who reads once in a while when they feel inspired. A reader is someone who reads because that is what readers do. A healthy person is not someone who diets for 3 days. A healthy person is someone who trains, chooses better, and repeats better because that is their standard. A disciplined person is not someone who gets it right once and celebrates. A disciplined person is someone who keeps their word to themselves. That's the difference. Prove it to yourself. Prove it to yourself. That phrase matters because your identity is built through evidence, not emotion. Evidence. Every time you read instead of scrolling, you prove you are a reader. Every time you train instead of making excuses, you prove you are a healthy person. Every time you finish what you said you would finish, you prove you are disciplined. Identity is not declared. Identity is demonstrated. You have a choice. You can wait for confidence to appear, or you can build confidence through evidence. That is the key. Action creates identity. Repetition confirms identity. Consistency protects identity. Stop expecting a new life while rehearsing an old one. You cannot keep acting like the old version of yourself and expect a new future to appear by magic. This is where many people sabotage themselves. They say, I'm just not that kind of person. That sentence is poison. It's a trap. It's a permission slip for weakness. If you keep speaking that way, you'll keep living that way. But if you change the story, your behavior starts to shift. Say, I am the kind of person who follows through. Say, I am the kind of person who finishes. Say, I am the kind of person who trains, studies, builds, saves, and improves. Then act like it. That's the key. Not motivation, identity. Not pressure, identity. Not applause, identity. You need to see every habit as a vote. Every action is a vote for the person you believe you are. Skip the workout? That's a vote. Finish the workout? That's a vote. Read the chapter? Vote. Delay again? Vote. Speak with discipline? Vote. Break your word? Vote. Your identity is being shaped constantly by what you do repeatedly. So here's your instruction. Stop trying to act successful for one day. Start acting like the person you want to become every day. The reader reads. The healthy person trains. The disciplined person keeps promises. The builder builds. The finisher finishes. That's how identity forms. That's how behavior changes. That's how your life changes. You have a choice. Keep protecting the old identity or start proving the new one. Stop saying you need more time to become that person. Become that person through what you do today. Small proof becomes strong identity. Strong identity becomes consistent behavior. Consistent behavior becomes a new life. You do not rise to your goals, you fall to your identity. You mastered identity. Now let's talk about the environment that shapes your choices before you even make them. Chapter 4. Make the good habit obvious. Listen carefully. Most people do not fail because they are weak. They fail because their good habits are hidden, out of sight, out of mind, forgotten, buried under clutter, distractions, and poor design. If you want better behavior, stop depending on memory alone. Design the environment, shape the space, control the cue. You have a choice. You can keep blaming yourself for forgetting, or you can make the right action impossible to ignore. That is the key. The brain responds to what it sees first. What you see, you think about. What you think about, you do. What you see, you think about. What you think about, you do. That is not theory. That is how behavior works. The environment is constantly giving commands. A book on the table says, "Read me." Workout clothes beside the bed say, "Train now." A bottle of water on the desk says, "Drink me." A healthy meal in plain sight says, "Choose me." The environment speaks before your discipline does, so make the environment speak for you. Make it visible, make it simple, make it obvious. That is the rule. If the habit is hidden, it becomes easy to skip. If it is obvious, it becomes easy to repeat. A reader does not wait until inspiration strikes. A reader places the book where the eyes will land on it. A person committed to fitness does not hide the workout plan in a drawer. They place the gear where movement begins. A person who wants better health does not bury good food under poor choices. They put the right food where the next decision happens. You have a choice. You can keep expecting willpower to win against forgetfulness, or you can build a system that guides your hand before hesitation starts. That is the key. The cue comes first, then the thought, then the action. If you control the cue, you control the chain. That is why the modern world is so dangerous. It is built to distract you. Notifications, endless feeds, pop-ups, noise, clutter, cheap entertainment everywhere. Your attention is under attack all day long. And if your good habits are not obvious, the bad habits will win by default. The world will not help you become better. The world will offer you distraction and call it freedom. That is why you must redesign your surroundings with intention. If you want to read more, leave the book open where you sit. If you want to train more, set your shoes by the door. If you want to eat better, place healthy food at eye level and move junk food out of easy reach. If you want to pray, meditate, write, stretch, or study, make the next action visible enough that you cannot pretend it is not there. Do not ask your future self to remember what your current self can arrange now. What you see, you think about. What you think about, you do. That is the key. Most people waste energy fighting temptation in their head when they could have removed the trigger with one simple decision. They do not need more strength, they need better design. They do not need more pressure, they need better placement. They do not need to be perfect, they need to make the next good choice easier than the bad one. That's the discipline. Not just desire, discipline. Not just hope, discipline. Not just effort, discipline. Look around your room, look at your desk, look at your phone, look at your kitchen, look at your calendar. These places are not neutral, they are shaping you every day. If your environment is messy, your habits will be messy. If your environment is clean, visible, and intentional, your habits become easier to repeat. Small cues create large consequences. So here is your instruction. Do not wait for a better mood. Reorganize your world. Place the habit in your line of sight. Remove the distraction from your reach. Build the cue before you build the excuse. Make the good habit impossible to overlook. You have a choice. Keep letting the world cue your weakness, or start using your environment to cue your discipline. Because once the right habit becomes obvious, it becomes natural. And once it becomes natural, it becomes part of who you are. Make it visible, make it simple, make it obvious. You mastered the cue. Now let's remove the traps that keep pulling you backward.
Chapter 5. Make the bad habit invisible. Listen carefully. The habits that destroy your life are not always loud. They are often quiet, hidden, convenient, accessible. They do not announce themselves as sabotage. They show up as one more scroll, one more snack, one more delay, one more excuse. That is how progress dies. Not in one big disaster, in small, repeated compromises. You have a choice. You can keep trying to resist temptation all day, or you can remove temptation before it starts. That is the key. Discipline is not only about saying no in the moment. Discipline is about designing your world so the wrong choice is harder to make. Do not fight temptation all day. Remove temptation before it starts. That is the lesson. Most people are exhausted because they keep putting themselves in the same weak positions and then acting surprised when they fail. They keep the junk food in the house and wonder why they overeat. They keep their phone beside them and wonder why they cannot focus. They keep following accounts that feed laziness, comparison, and distraction and wonder why their mind is never settled. That is not bad luck. That is bad design. You need to understand this clearly. Your environment can either support your discipline or sabotage it. There is no neutral ground. If the trigger is still there, the temptation is still alive. If the temptation is still alive, you're spending energy fighting it. And if you spend all day fighting it, you will eventually lose. That is why invisible bad habits are weak habits. Turn off the notifications. That's one simple move, not because the notifications are evil, but because they are interruptions. They hijack attention. They fracture focus. They pull your mind out of the work and into the noise. If your goal is concentration, stop inviting chaos into your pocket. Remove the junk food from the house, not because you are powerless, but because you're smart enough to know that convenience shapes behavior. The easiest food is usually the food you eat, so make the easy food the healthy food. Less friction for good, more friction for bad. Unfollow the accounts that feed procrastination and comparison. That is not weakness, that is wisdom. You do not need endless exposure to people living a life that makes you lazy, angry, or insecure. You do not need their permission. You do not need their approval. You need clarity. You need focus. You need peace. Less friction for good, more friction for bad. Less friction for good, more friction for bad. That is how discipline becomes easier, not by brute force alone, by reducing the number of battles you have to fight. Every time you make a bad habit slightly harder, you weaken it. Every time you make a good habit slightly easier, you strengthen it. Tiny changes in the environment create major changes in the outcome. You have a choice. You can keep living in a setup that pulls you backward, or you can redesign your space to protect your future. That is the key. The strongest people are not the ones who battle temptation forever. They're the ones who make temptation less available. Think about it like this. If you want to stop wasting time online, move the apps, remove the shortcuts, log out, disable the alerts, put distance between impulse and action. If you want to stop eating badly, stop storing the wrong food where your hand can reach it in seconds. If you want to stop procrastinating, stop keeping the distractions one tap away. Make the bad habit work. Make it inconvenient. Make it visible enough to reject and difficult enough to avoid. Do not wait for willpower to save you. Willpower is good, but it gets tired. Design does not get tired. That is why environment matters. That is why systems matter. That is why small changes matter. You do not need to become a different person overnight. You need to stop making the wrong behavior easy. That's where transformation starts. Not in grand speeches, in practical decisions, in removed triggers, in blocked access, in deleted shortcuts, in changed habits of reach, sight, and routine. You have a choice. Keep making bad habits convenient or make them invisible. Keep feeding weakness with access or starve it with distance. Keep blaming yourself for repeated failure or take control of the setup that causes it. Do not fight temptation all day. Remove temptation before it starts. That is the discipline. That is the strategy. That is the way forward. You made the bad habit harder. Now let's make the right habit easier to repeat.
Chapter 6. Make the good habit easy to repeat. Listen carefully. People do not rise to effort. They return to ease. That is the truth. That is why so many good intentions collapse under pressure. Not because the goal was wrong, not because the dream was weak, because the habit was too hard to repeat when life got busy, when energy dropped, when motivation disappeared. You have a choice. You can keep building habits that require perfect conditions, or you can build habits that survive real life. That is the key. Real life is messy. Real life is tired mornings, long days, distractions, stress, and resistance. If your habit only works when everything is easy, it is not strong enough yet. Reduce resistance, increase repetition. Reduce resistance, increase repetition. That is the formula. Make the habit so easy to begin that your excuses lose power. Make the first step so small that your mind has nothing to fight. Make the action so simple that even on a bad day, you can still do it. Because consistency is not built on dramatic effort. It is built on repeatable ease. Look at the gym clothes example. If you want to train in the morning, do not leave your outfit buried in a drawer while you're half asleep and making decisions under pressure. Put the clothes out the night before. Put the shoes there. Put the bottle there. Make the next action obvious and simple. When you wake up, the battle is already half won. That is the key. Look at task batching.
If you keep switching between 10 different tasks, your mind bleeds energy everywhere. But when you group similar work together, you reduce friction. You make starting easier. You make finishing more likely. You stop wasting strength on transitions and start using strength on execution. Look at 2-minute actions. If the habit feels too heavy, shrink it. Read 1 page. Do 1 push-up. Write 1 sentence. Clean 1 corner. Open the document. Start the timer. That first tiny act matters because momentum is often more important than intensity. Once you begin, the resistance drops. Once the resistance drops, repetition gets easier. Do not make it impressive, make it repeatable. Do not make it impressive, make it repeatable. That is the lesson. Most people want a habit that sounds powerful. They want it to look noble. They want it to feel serious. But if the habit is too complicated, too time-consuming, or too mentally expensive, it dies quickly. And dead habits don't change lives. Repeatable habits do. You have a choice. You can build a routine that makes you feel productive for a day, or you can build one that actually survives. That is the key. The habit does not need to be hard to matter. It needs to be easy enough to repeat when you are tired, busy, distracted, or discouraged. Think about what usually breaks your progress. It's not always laziness. Sometimes it's friction. Too many steps, too much setup, too many decisions, too much mental weight. So remove the friction. Set things up in advance. Automate what you can. Prepare what you need. Lower the cost of starting. Lower the cost of continuing. If you want to write every day, leave the notebook open. If you want to exercise, lay out the gear. If you want to study, put the materials on the desk before the day begins. If you want to meditate, set the space before the noise starts. Do not wait for the perfect mood. Create the easiest possible path to the action. That's discipline. Not dramatic effort, discipline. Not impressive bursts, discipline. Not random intensity, discipline. The easier a habit is to repeat, the more likely it is to survive pressure. The more it survives pressure, the more it becomes identity. And the more it becomes identity, the less you need to argue with yourself every day. That's why ease matters. Not because ease is soft, but because ease is sustainable. Remember this, a habit that is difficult to repeat is a habit built for failure. A habit that is easy to repeat is a habit built for life. You are not trying to win one perfect day. You are trying to build a system that still works when your emotions change. So don't overcomplicate it. Simplify it. Start smaller. Prepare more. Decide less in the moment. Repeat more often. Reduce resistance. Increase repetition. That's how a habit becomes normal. That's how normal becomes natural. That's how natural becomes your new standard. You have a choice. Keep building routines that collapse under pressure, or build habits that can breathe in real life. Keep making the first step harder than it needs to be, or make the first step so easy that progress starts almost automatically. Do not make it impressive, make it repeatable. You reduced the friction. Now let's remove the last layer of resistance and make bad habits painful to continue.
Chapter 7. Make the bad habit harder to continue. Listen carefully. Bad habits survive because they are easy, they are immediate, they are available. They're right there waiting for your weak moment. That is why you do not just need more willpower, you need more friction. You need more delay. You need more distance between impulse and action. You have a choice. You can keep relying on self-control in the exact moments when self-control is at its lowest, or you can make the bad habit harder to continue. That is the key.
Weak habits grow in convenience. Strong habits grow in resistance. If the bad habit becomes inconvenient, it loses power. Make bad habits expensive to keep. Make bad habits expensive to keep. That is the rule. Do not make the wrong behavior easy to return to. Do not let it sit one tap away, one click away, one decision away. If you can do the damage instantly, you will. That's human nature. So block the shortcut, slow it down, add steps, add friction, add space. Look at social media. If it's draining your focus, log out. Do not stay signed in. Delete the app if you need to. Remove the icon from your home screen. Put the password somewhere annoying to reach. Do not give your impulse a fast lane. Every extra step creates a moment to think. Every moment to think weakens the habit. Create distance, create delay, create discipline. That's the pattern. Distance breaks attachment. Delay breaks impulse. Discipline grows in the gap between the urge and the action. When you shorten that gap, bad habits win fast. When you lengthen that gap, you regain control. Think about spending. If your weakness is impulse buying, don't leave payment methods stored everywhere. Remove the saved card. Turn off one-click purchases. Wait before buying. Make every unnecessary purchase require effort. That small inconvenience can save you from weeks of regret. The same rule applies to food, entertainment, gossip, and every other habit that drains your future. Make the habit work for access. Think about distraction. If your mind keeps drifting to the wrong thing, don't pretend you can outthink every trigger. Put barriers in place. Use blockers. Change the layout. Move the thing farther away. Close the tab. Shut the laptop. Stand up. Interrupt the pattern. That's how you weaken a behavior that keeps trying to own you. Willpower is unreliable. Friction works. Willpower is unreliable. Friction works. That's the truth people don't want to hear. They want to believe they can feel stronger every day. They want to believe motivation will show up on command. It will not. Some days you'll be sharp. Some days you'll be tired. Some days you'll be lazy. Some days you'll be emotional. If your plan depends on always feeling strong, your plan will fail. But if your plan depends on making the wrong habit inconvenient, your chances improve immediately. You have a choice. You can keep making bad habits cheap, fast, and effortless, or you can make them expensive to maintain. That's the key. You don't defeat a destructive pattern by arguing with it forever. You defeat it by making continuation painful enough that your brain stops asking for it so often. If you want to stop wasting time, create barriers. If you want to stop overindulging, remove access. If you want to stop falling into the same cycle, interrupt the cycle. Break the chain, delay the decision, force the pause. That pause is power. That pause is where discipline lives. Do not be casual with your weakness. Be strategic. Be deliberate. Be brutal about the cost of bad behavior. The easier it is to continue, the more it continues. The harder it is to continue, the faster it loses its grip. That's the key. Not shame, friction. Not guilt, friction. Not hoping you'll be stronger tomorrow, friction. Make the bad habit require effort. Make it require thought. Make it require a decision you can actually notice. Make it slow enough to challenge the impulse. Because once the habit is no longer automatic, you get your life back one choice at a time. Create distance, create delay, create discipline. That's how you take away the power of what keeps pulling you down. That's how you protect the future you're building.
That's how habits stop controlling you and start obeying you. You made the bad habit costly. Now let's talk about what makes the right habit stick.
Chapter 8. Reward the habit immediately. Listen carefully. The brain repeats what it feels rewarded by. That is the truth. That is the mechanism. That is why so many people quit too soon. The reward is too far away. The effort is immediate, but the payoff feels invisible. And when progress does not feel real, motivation dies. You have a choice. You can keep building habits that feel empty in the moment, or you can make progress feel real today. That is the key. The brain does not wait patiently for long-term benefits. It wants proof now. It wants evidence now. It wants a signal that the effort meant something. What gets rewarded gets repeated. What gets rewarded gets repeated. That is the law, not a suggestion, not a theory, a law of behavior. If a habit gives your brain some immediate satisfaction, some visible win, some quick sense of completion, it becomes easier to return to. If the habit only promises a payoff months later, many people abandon it before the reward arrives. That is why people quit, not always because the habit is hard, sometimes because the reward is too delayed. They work out once and feel nothing. They study for one night and feel no transformation. They save for 1 week and feel no wealth. They write for 10 minutes and feel no fame. So they stop. They mistake delayed results for useless effort. That is a mistake. You need to understand this clearly. Progress must be felt. It must be seen. It must be marked. It must be rewarded in the present. Track the streak. That is one simple move. Put a mark on the calendar. Use the chain. Use the count. Use something visual that says, "I showed up today." That small signal matters. It tells the brain, we are winning, and the brain loves winning. The brain repeats winning. Check off the task. Do not leave completed work floating in the air with no closure. End the task. Mark it done. Cross it off. Celebrate the completion. That tiny moment of closure turns effort into satisfaction. It turns action into evidence. It turns discipline into a visible outcome. Celebrate the workout, not with overeating, not with self-destruction, with a ritual that tells the mind the mission mattered. A deep breath, a moment of silence, a glass of water, a short walk, a line in a notebook, a quick reflection, something that says, I kept my word. That matters. That trains the brain to associate effort with reward. Make progress feel real today. Make progress feel real today. That is the message. Too many people wait for some future celebration to feel proud. But by then, the habit has already weakened. You need immediate reinforcement, immediate proof, immediate recognition. Not because the habit is shallow, but because the human mind learns through consequence. You have a choice. You can keep asking your brain to obey a reward it cannot see, or you can give it a clear signal that the right action matters now. That is the key. Reward does not have to be massive. It has to be meaningful enough to make repetition easier. If you want to read daily, finish the session with a check mark and the feeling of completion. If you want to train daily, make the end of the workout feel like an achievement, not punishment. If you want to study daily, close the book knowing you kept the promise. If you want to build daily, mark the progress where your eyes can see it. The habit becomes stronger when the reward becomes immediate. That is why delayed gratification is so difficult. It demands belief before proof. It demands patience before payoff. It demands discipline before celebration. And most people do not have enough structure to stay faithful that long. So, help the brain. Give it a signal. Give it a win. Give it something now. What gets rewarded gets repeated. What gets rewarded gets repeated. Remember that. The reward can be simple: a streak, a check mark, a clean finish, a shared update, a small ritual. The point is not to become dependent on praise. The point is to make the correct behavior feel alive. Because what feels alive gets repeated. What feels rewarding gets repeated. What feels real gets repeated. This is how habits survive the gap between effort and outcome. This is how progress becomes emotionally believable before it becomes visibly impressive. This is how discipline stays in motion even when the destination is still far away. So stop waiting for the world to clap before you continue. Create your own signal. Create your own reward. Teach your brain that the right action produces a win now, not someday. That is how momentum is built. That is how habits become sticky. That is how repetition becomes identity. You have a choice. Keep starving your habits of reward or make progress feel real today. Keep expecting long delays to motivate you, or give yourself immediate evidence that you are moving forward. What gets rewarded gets repeated. You learned how to reward the habit. Now let's talk about what happens when you slip and how one mistake can either break you or build you.
Chapter 9. Never break the chain twice. Listen carefully. You will slip. That is not the issue. The issue is what you do after the slip. One bad day does not destroy you. One missed workout does not destroy you. One skipped study session does not destroy you. One lapse is not the end. But 2 lapses back to back, that is where a pattern begins. That is where identity starts to shift. You have a choice. You can treat a mistake like a collapse, or you can treat it like a correction. That is the key. Progress is not built on perfection. Progress is built on recovery, on return, on the decision to come back immediately before weakness becomes your new normal. 1 slip is a mistake. 2 slips is a pattern. 1 slip is a mistake. 2 slips is a pattern. That sentence matters because most people do not fail from 1 bad day. They fail because they let 1 bad day expand. They miss Monday, then they say Tuesday is already ruined. They break the diet once, then they call the whole week lost. They skip the workout, then they wait for next Monday. They lose momentum, then they start speaking like people who have already given up. That is how the chain breaks, not at the first break, at the second. Never let 1 bad day become a bad week. Never let 1 bad day become a bad week. That is the rule. The moment you miss, you return. The moment you fall, you rise. The moment you drift, you correct. Do not sit inside the mistake. Do not decorate the mistake. Do not identify with the mistake. Recover immediately. Top performers understand this. They protect momentum. They do not need to be perfect, but they know how to come back fast. A strong athlete has a bad session and shows up the next day. A serious business owner has a bad sales call and makes the next call. A disciplined student misses 1 review and gets back to the books that same evening. They do not worship the streak, they protect the return. You have a choice. You can worship a perfect record, or you can build a resilient identity. That is the key. Perfect streaks are fragile. Resilient habits are powerful. 1 slip does not define you. The speed of your recovery does. That is why you must stop using failure as an excuse to spiral. A mistake is information. It tells you where your system was weak. It shows you where your setup was bad. It reveals where the trigger won. That is not a reason to quit. That is a reason to adjust. If you missed the workout, do not wait 2 days to restart. Move again now. If you broke your food plan, do not turn the whole day into a disaster. Make the next meal clean. If you wasted the morning, do not waste the afternoon too. Reset immediately. If you got distracted, do not let that distraction become the story of your week. Return, re-engage, rebuild. That's the key. Not shame, recovery. Not collapse, recovery. Not I failed so I am done, recovery. This is where discipline becomes real. Not when everything goes smoothly, when you come back quickly,
when you refuse to let one setback become self-betrayal, when you prove to yourself that a slip is only a slip, not a sentence. One slip is a mistake, two slips is a pattern. That is why the chain matters. A chain represents continuity. It represents identity in motion. It represents the fact that you are building something day by day. But the chain is not fragile because of the first break. It is fragile because of the second. The first break is a signal. The second becomes a habit, and habits shape your life. So learn this now. Protect the return. If you break the rhythm today, return today. If you miss the mark today, re-enter today. If you drift today, correct today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. That is how momentum survives. That is how discipline survives. That is how confidence survives. You have a choice. Keep waiting for perfect consistency or become skilled at quick recovery. Keep turning mistakes into long setbacks or turn them into short interruptions. Keep letting one bad day spread or stop it where it starts. Never let one bad day become a bad week. Never let one bad day become a bad week. That is the difference between fragile effort and real discipline. That is the difference between someone who quits and someone who keeps becoming. You mastered recovery. Now let's bring the whole system together and lock in the identity.
Chapter 10. Become the person who cannot be stopped. Listen carefully. This is where everything comes together. Not the goals, not the motivation, not the speeches, not the inspiration. The habits, the identity, the repetition, the discipline. That is what changes a life. By now, you have learned the truth that most people spend years avoiding. Success is not an event. It is not luck. It is not talent alone. It is not a secret reserved for a special few. Success is built, piece by piece, habit by habit, day by day. You have a choice. You can go back to the old way of living, chasing motivation and waiting for perfect conditions, or you can become the kind of person who moves forward regardless of how they feel. That is the key. The goal of this book was never to make you feel motivated. Motivation fades. The goal was to help you become someone different, someone stronger, someone more disciplined, someone who understands that greatness is built in the ordinary moments. This is who I am now. This is who I am now. This is the phrase that changes everything. Not I hope, not I wish, not one day. This is who I am now. Because the moment identity changes, behavior follows. Think about the person who transformed their health. At first, they struggled. At first, they missed workouts. At first, they fought temptation. But eventually, something shifted. They stopped saying, I am trying to get healthy. They started saying, I am a healthy person. And then they acted accordingly. This is who I am now. Think about the entrepreneur who built a successful business. They did not wake up one day and suddenly become successful. They built systems. They learned skills. They made mistakes. They improved, day after day, year after year, until discipline became their default setting. This is who I am now. Think about the student who became exceptional, the reader who became knowledgeable, the saver who became financially secure, the creator who became influential, the athlete who became strong. None of them were transformed by one dramatic moment. They were transformed by repeated actions. Repeated actions created identity. Identity created consistency. Consistency created results. That is the key. Most people are searching for some complicated answer. They want a shortcut. They want a hack. They want an easier path. But there is no mystery. There is only repetition. There is only discipline. There is only the willingness to do what needs to be done long after the excitement disappears. You have a choice. You can continue making excuses, or you can start making progress. You can continue blaming circumstances,
or you can start controlling your habits. You can continue waiting for permission, or you can remember something important. You don't need their permission. You do not need permission to improve. You do not need permission to become disciplined. You do not need permission to build a better future. You do not need permission to become the strongest version of yourself. That decision belongs to you, and only you. That is why every lesson in this book matters. Small habits matter. Systems matter. Identity matters. Environment matters. Consistency matters. Recovery matters. Every chapter was pointing toward one truth. You become what you repeatedly do. Nothing more, nothing less. It's not about motivation, it's about discipline. It's not about talent, it's about discipline. It's not about perfection, it's about discipline. That is the foundation. That is the difference. That is the reason some people transform while others remain stuck. The people who change their lives stop negotiating with themselves. They stop waiting, they stop hoping, they stop talking, and they start acting. This is who I am now. Say it again. This is who I am now. The disciplined person, the focused person, the consistent person, the person who builds promises, the person who follows through, the person who builds instead of complains, the person who executes instead of excuses. This is who I am now. Because identity is not found, identity is built. And from this day forward, every habit you perform becomes another vote for the person you are becoming. So choose carefully, choose intentionally, choose daily, because your future is being built right now, not tomorrow, not next year, today. Small habits, strong identity, massive results. Small habits, strong identity, massive results. That is not a slogan. That is reality. And if you commit to it, if you live it, if you repeat it long enough, you will become the person who cannot be stopped. You mastered the habits, you built the identity. Now the only thing left to do is live it. Small habits, strong identity, massive results. Now you understand the truth. Your life is not changed by one big moment, one big decision, or one perfect burst of motivation. Your life changes when your habits change. Your life changes when your identity changes. Your life changes when you stop waiting and start repeating the right actions every single day. Small habits are not small. They are powerful. They are dangerous. They are destiny in disguise. Build the system. Protect the routine. Repeat the standard. Become the person your future requires. And remember this. The habits you keep are the life you get. So today, decide who you are becoming and act like it immediately. If this message challenged you, like the video right now and subscribe to Mindshift Audiobooks for more life-changing lessons every single week.